From the nation's capital and from just down the road from the U.S. Capitol, I'm Steve Kornacki, and we are now 8 days away and counting from the midterm election that will decide who controls that building right behind me. The margins, they could not be tighter. Democrats clinging to a Senate majority thanks only to the tie-breaking vote of the vice president, and Republicans needing a gain of just 5 seats to win back the House. As for the polling, well, it's sending some decidedly mixed signals, adding only to the uncertainty and the suspense before this election. Just this morning, brand new numbers from 4 Senate battlegrounds: Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania. Numbers that, if you're a Democrat, should encourage you. Of course, we've also seen the polls lead us astray more than once in recent years as well. And on this Halloween, there are also plenty of numbers that might frighten Democrats as well. The president's popularity, it remains low, and new Gallup polling just this morning again underscoring that the economy and inflation are at the very top of voters' minds. These are issues where Republicans enjoy a decided advantage. Already now, more than 22 million Americans have cast their ballots early, and that gets to the ultimate variable. Next week's midterm could shatter all records when it comes to turnout. Who exactly will and won't turn up? That's another layer of uncertainty there. Former President Donald Trump, meanwhile, his presence looms unusually large for an ex-president in this midterm campaign. He'll be hitting the campaign trail in this home stretch. So, too, will be President Biden, although his presence rather muted for a sitting president. Welcome to our set here in D.C. as we count down 8 days to Election Day. And as we say, with all that early voting going on, the election in many ways already underway. So again, to underscore the stakes here, a 50-50 Senate, Republicans needing a net gain of 1 seat to get control of the Senate back. The House sits as close as it could possibly be, pretty much. It would be a net gain of 5 seats that Republicans need if they're going to take back the House here. Taking a look at the Senate battleground, in blue, you see the 5 most vulnerable Democratic seats. In red, you see the 5 most vulnerable Republican seats. For every one of these blue seats that Republicans are able to flip red, if they're able to flip any of them red, but for every one that they do, Democrats have to counter by flipping one of these red states blue. That would keep the Senate at that 50-50 balance, where, again, Democrats get the majority because Kamala Harris breaks the tie. Now, the big picture question here, a week plus out from Election Day, we've been asking, what is the current political atmosphere? Does it favor one party or the other? We have been tracking what they call the generic ballot. When you ask folks in polling, do you want Republicans? Do you want Democrats to be controlling Congress here? We've looked at this thing in past midterms. Sometimes it has been shouting and screaming a week out from the election. One party has a clear advantage. That was certainly the case 4 years ago with Democrats. You could see that in 2010 when Republicans had that huge year. This is where there's some confusion right now in the polling, and I just want to give you a sense of it here. There's a couple of different folks here who track the average of the generic ballot. Real Clear Politics has been doing this for about 20 years. Real Clear Politics, their average of the polls puts Republicans ahead in the generic ballot by just about 3 points here. Basically, in the last 2 weeks, in their polling average, last 3 weeks, it went from even to Republicans by about this margin. That's Real Clear Politics. You take a look, 538. They have their own average. They have their own formula. They don't all include the same polls. This gets highly technical and complicated, but the 538 average, closer. Republicans, 0.8 of a point ahead in the generic ballot. And then we say, well, how about this? Let's do our own average here just for the heck of it and see. Let's just take every poll that has come out in the last 2 weeks. Every poll that's come out in the last 2 weeks. What would happen if you just averaged those together just to see? And it would be Republicans by 0.4 of a point. So there's sort of a range of possibilities here in terms of the poll average. As I said, in some past midterm elections, there have been very clear, very pronounced leads for one party at this point. The Republicans seem to have some sort of edge here right now on the generic ballot, but exactly to what degree they have an edge, that's the mystery, that's the suspense. And again, it raises all sorts of possibilities, especially when you factor in the possibility for record-shattering turnout, talking about north of 120 million people, numbers that would have been unthinkable in a midterm election a decade ago, but now perhaps our new norm. Let's take a deeper look at some of these key races. As we mentioned just this morning, brand new set of polls from the New York Times and Siena College in some of these states. So let's start in Georgia. Georgia, of course, right now, Democratic-held seat. Raphael Warnock, the incumbent, Herschel Walker, the Republican challenger. This, you see, the new number this morning from that New York Times Siena poll. It's Warnock 49, Walker 46. Important note on Georgia, it's a runoff state. If nobody gets to 50% on November 8th, they'll do it all over again on December 6th. We've seen this scenario before where Senate control comes down to a Georgia runoff. Not impossible that could happen this year. But the most notable thing in the Georgia polling continues to be this. You see Walker running in this poll 3 points behind Abrams. Take a look at the average of the polls in the governor's race in Georgia. And there you see the Republican incumbent Brian Kemp comfortably ahead of the Democrat Stacey Abrams and over 50%. So there continues to be a gap between Kemp, the Republican, in the governor's race and Walker, the Republican, in the Senate race. That gap looms large in the home stretch of this campaign. Let me give you a sense here of where we'll be looking in the early hour or two of election night here, where I think most of the action is going to be, again, starting at about 7 o'clock Eastern time. So start in Florida here, and I think Florida is the most efficient sort of big state, maybe the most efficient state, period, when it comes to counting up its votes. Everything except the Panhandle. So that is basically 90% of all the vote in Florida is going to start getting reported at 7 o'clock. And essentially the rule in the state is every county within 30 minutes is supposed to report out all of its early and all of its mail vote. And what that will be is about 2/3 of the vote, give or take, in every county. So in that 7 to 8 o'clock hour, you're going to get the majority of the vote in Florida. And then as soon as that's reported out by the counties, they then begin reporting out their same date. Also at 7 o'clock, critically closing in Georgia. And that's where we've got, obviously, there's the governor's race, and then there's the Senate race everybody's talking about here. Now, in Georgia, one thing to keep in mind, again, related to that conversation you're having about the order that votes are released. Under the new voting law in Georgia, it's explicitly in the law right now, they encourage the counties to begin tabulating, and this is the key word here, tabulating instead of processing the early and the mail vote on Election Day. And the Secretary of State's office in Georgia has been working to encourage the counties to do this, meaning they get this flood of votes that are cast either early or by mail. And in the past, a lot of counties have waited until, the end of the night to count it up. And it's been, we saw in 2020 how that could result in some long delays. There's the possibility here that it's going to be a lot like Florida in Georgia tonight, where you get the mail and you get the early vote, especially in the big counties early. We'll see if that happens, but that possibility exists. And if that's the case, you could see, especially in this Atlanta area, that's the core Democratic area of the state, you could see the Democrats jump out to a quick early lead here in the statewide vote, and then it could be same-day vote coming after that. The Republicans catch them. So that's one thing to keep an eye on there. There's 3 districts in Virginia we're keeping a particular eye on tonight. One is the 2nd District of Virginia. Now, this is the Virginia Beach area here. The incumbent's Elaine Luria. She was elected in that 2018 Democratic wave. This is very competitive political territory. Joe Biden carried this by 2 points in 2020. Glenn Youngkin won this by 11 points when he was elected governor last year of Virginia. You see Jen Kiggins, the Republican challenger to Elaine Luria, about 22% of the vote in right now, is leading. Now, this is a state and this is a district where the first reported vote may be more Republican-friendly than the final result, where you're going to get more of the same-day vote in the early mix than you're going to get the early vote. And so you see Kiggins jumping out to a lead here. We'll see. The name of the game here is, as that early vote is added to the mix, can Luria get closer? Can she hold on here? But this is one Republicans at sort of a threshold level tonight, a district that Joe Biden won by 2 points. They want to be winning districts that Joe Biden won by 2 points. The next level here, test sort of for Republicans, this is the 7th district. Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat, again, elected in that 2018 wave. Yesli Vega, Republican challenger. Now, again, you're getting a lot of same-day vote here, so that is pushing that Republican number very high. This is a district, I'll just show you. It's a district that Joe Biden won by 6 points. So Republicans, it's a little bit more of a hurdle for Republicans to get this one. They feel like on a normal night they could get the 2nd. They feel on a good night they could get the 7th, a night that they might have a bit of a wave going on nationally. But again, I caution you, that number should come down both with early vote being added to the mix, and also if you just look at where the vote is coming in from so far, the place that has no votes yet is the most Democratic component of the county. That's Prince William William County. We don't have any votes from there yet. So again, Spanberger has opportunities to make up what looks like a big gap there on paper, but that's a key race, that 7th district there in Virginia. If Republicans win the 2nd and the 7th, that starts to put them on track for, you know, a significant night. If Democrats defend the 2nd and the 7th, that starts to put them on track for a good night as well. It's a very slow count. We were hoping it'd be a little quicker here in New Hampshire. So it's a scattering. You got some vote from, oh, we just got Philadelphia. I'll come back to New Hampshire, I promise. No offense to the Granite Staters, but here we go. Here's Philadelphia. And what we got here is, yeah, so it's about 61,000. They were telling us 100,000. But we've got here about 62, 63,000 mail votes reported out here, though. But again, you can, I mean, look, this is a 55,000 net gain here for John Fetterman, mail votes coming out of Philadelphia. So you've got the two biggest counties in the state, Philadelphia and Allegheny. And we know in Philadelphia there are tens of thousands of mail-in votes that are still to come, but they're going to look like this. They're going to be hugely advantageous to the Democrats. So with only that counted right now, this is what the statewide vote looks like in Pennsylvania. It's an advantage starting out of over 160,000 votes for Fetterman over Oz. Still to come will be the same-day vote in Allegheny, the same-day vote in Philadelphia. We're going to get mail from all the other counties in the state, plus the same day. But again, this just with counties this big reporting out this much mail vote that favors the Democrat by this margin, I think it sets the stage again. The storyline we're going to be following tonight, for those who remember the 2020 election in Pennsylvania, may well be the reverse. I think the storyline tonight might be, is Oz, on the strength of same-day vote, able to catch up with Fetterman, who gets, again, the reports, the early mail reports that we didn't see in 2020. What I want you to focus your attention on is the right side of the screen, because what we've done is we've organized the competitive or potentially competitive House races into a series of categories here. And again, keeping in mind the idea here, as you say, Republicans need a net gain of 5 seats just to get control of the House. Now, we talked in the early hours tonight about how the Florida map had been aggressively redrawn to give Republicans some additional seats, and they succeeded. Florida 4, Florida 13, and Florida 7. These all count as flips. These all count as Republican gains. These are all the result of a redrawn map in Florida. And if you look at this list, these are all districts currently held by Democrats that were won by Trump. So this is sort of the first line of attack for Republicans. Trump already won them. Can their candidates win? There's a couple others here, as I say. Tennessee 5, redrawn aggressively, to the Republicans' benefit, and Georgia 6. So there's sort of 5 on this list here that were redrawn in that kind of a way to really benefit Republicans. So that, if they can win all 5 of those, is a gain of 5. Let's look beyond those districts, though, because we're also starting to get some results from elsewhere as well. For instance, the 9th District of Ohio, we're ticking up toward half the vote in. You're starting to get same-day vote in. Again, this is Marcy Kaptur, longtime Democratic incumbent, redrawn into this Trump district, gets this very controversial Republican opponent who's had scandal kind of rock his campaign. And, Kaptur has a real chance to hold on here. Take a look at Pennsylvania's 8th district. Now, I know we're dealing with a lot of mail-in ballots so far, so these numbers are going to change, but this is Matt Cartwright. This is a district Trump won in 2020. Cartwright survived. Scranton, this is Joe Biden's native area here, Pennsylvania 8. So Democrats trying to hold on in a place like this. The 3rd district of Iowa, we got about a third of the vote in. This is Democratic-friendly vote that's in, but Cindy Oxney trying to hold on there for the Democrats. What I'm trying to say here is, outside of the obviously drawn pickup opportunities for Republicans, which we've seen them cash in on 3, and we see them in position to do the same potentially in 2 more, you're not seeing right now automatically, you're not seeing clear Republican paths to pickups in these other seats that I'm showing you.
A race characterization change that we just had. North Carolina Senate just moved from too early to call between Sherry Beasley and Ted Budd to now being too close to call. Can you give us any insight into why there was that change? Yeah, let's take a look now at the lay of the land in North Carolina, because you see Ted Budd is leading in the statewide tally right now, a margin of about 113,000, 112,000 votes right there. There are some areas here, and I think we showed this one earlier, a place like Union County. This is a
a big, right outside of Charlotte, core Republican area where Ted Budd is running a couple points better than Donald Trump. So there's some good news for Republicans on this map, but Cheri Beasley's countering that in some important places, and she also has a sort of a potential weapon here in where the vote is still to come in. I think we just got some vote out of Arizona, so I'm just going to shift over here. Let's just call this up, because in Arizona, when the vote comes in, it comes in fast. Holy cow. This is what I mean by the vote coming in fast. We've now got more than 40% of the vote in Arizona's Senate race here, and you could just see here. I'm sorry, I'm trying to call it Blue County. Maricopa County is the mother lode. It's more than 60% of the vote in Arizona. And you can see here what happens is they release first in one giant batch the vote, the early vote, the mail vote that was returned generally by like the Saturday before the election. Okay, that's what happens. That's what comes out first in Maricopa County. Then for the rest of the night, they report out the same day vote, and then tomorrow and later on, we're going to get the late arriving early vote. So to take a look here, Kelly leading 59-39 in this initial report out of Maricopa County. I have written down here what the initial report out of Maricopa County was in 2020, and I'm trying to find it. It was, I apologize, here it is. The initial report out of Maricopa County in 2020 was Biden by 10. In the initial report coming out of Maricopa County here in 2022 is 20 points. Now, the one thing I would caution you on is that 2020 number, when Biden led the initial count by 10 in Maricopa, it was a much larger share of votes. It was 71% of the total vote in the county. This is a little bit more than half of the vote. So there's the possibility here that there's more room for Masters to make up ground here than Trump had in 2020. But still, that is if you're a Democrat and you see more than half the vote in Maricopa County, that's got to be probably encouraging to see. Here's what I can tell you now. Our decision desk has been watching all of these districts that I've been running through here, running a model, trying to come up with a projection for how the House will ultimately end up. And the decision desk is now ready to release its model for the House. Now, I want you to remember, control of the House is 218 seats. Our decision desk's model that they've just released within the last minute is that the Republicans will end up with 219 seats.
But look,
plus
this is important.
Or minus 13. So this is essentially landing in our model as a tie at the moment, as close as you could get to a tie for House control in our model at midnight on election night. So all of those different tiers that I'm showing you right now, and all of the trends that are emerging in the counties and the districts that have been called, or where we have partial results, when you put those into our model, and the model gets smarter with the more data you feed it with, it adds up right now to Republicans 219, could be less, could be more. There's almost an equal chance when you look at that of Republicans ending up in control of the House or Democrats retaining control of the House.
Wow. Now, Steve, as I understand this projection, so as you said, 218 is what you need for a House majority. The projection is 219 Republican seats with a margin of error, effectively, of 13 seats. Are we also able to say conclusively that there is no chance we will know tonight who will control the House?
I can't officially make that call for the decision desk, but everything I've told you about California, the number of competitive seats in California, there are a half a dozen seats that Democrats are targeting. There are seats that Republicans are targeting. And these California races, it's extremely, extremely hard to fathom a scenario where any close race in California, any remotely close race in California is called tonight, especially given what the stakes have now landed at in terms of House control. So again, we said at the start of the night, I think it was the start of the night, that if we landed in a position where Democrats actually had a chance at controlling the House of Representatives, and that would mean landing with 220, 221 seats, something like that, it would necessarily come down to California, to defending their vulnerable seats in California, and to picking off the vulnerable Republicans or the potentially vulnerable Republicans in California. And that process, again, think back to the 2018 midterms if you can. If you remember, that blue wave in 2018 grew by a substantial number of seats in the weeks after the November election as the vote count progressed in California. So we have election season getting underway in California, where you're going to get incremental updates in these districts. Every day you're going to get a couple thousand votes, different counties, it's going to be uneven and it's going to take a while. That's the way it goes in California. But with this kind of a margin, it's hard to see how we are not now living in a world where that's going to be our lives for the next couple weeks. What we're expecting any second now is from Maricopa County, the largest county in the state by far. 60% of all the vote in Arizona comes out of Maricopa County. This is what happens basically around this time every night in the days following the election. They report out big chunks of vote. So what's left to come here in Maricopa County, what we're expecting in the next few minutes, it's votes that were basically returned, ballots that were returned Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? So basically over the weekend, ballots that were returned over the weekend, plus some ballots that were returned on Monday of this week, okay? They were all brought in. They have not been added into the count yet. This total pool, the weekend ballots plus the Monday ballots, is 136,000 votes. The one other major outstanding piece of business in Maricopa County, and this is a biggie, is going to be 275,000 votes that were delivered by voters to the polls on Election Day in person. And this is the wild card, and it may end up being the ultimate wild card, because there's good theories from each party about how to interpret how this vote's going to look. Republicans look at that and they say, well, that vote, the vote that was delivered in person on Election Day in 2020, that was a pro-Trump vote. That's why, if you remember in 2020, as the week went along, Biden's lead got shorter and shorter and shorter, and he ended up winning the state by less than 9,700 votes. That was these ballots being counted up election week 2020. Democrats countered that, hey, in the last midterm election of 2018, it was this same group of votes, the votes delivered on Election Day, that lifted the Democrat Kyrsten Sinema to victory in the race for the U.S. Senate. So we have seen this batch of votes behave two different ways in the past two elections. So it looms as sort of the ultimate wild card. But I think what Democrats are hoping here is, on the assumption or the possibility that this is a Republican-friendly group of votes, they see in the votes that you're going to get reported out, we think tonight, we think in the next few minutes, I keep looking over here, they see an opportunity to try to pad Mark Kelly's lead. Okay, we just got the vote in from Clark County, Nevada. It's not reflected yet in our board. It will be momentarily. I can tell you, though, that batch of 22,000 plus votes is in. Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat, gets 14,084 new votes from that. Adam Laxalt, the Republican, gets 8,239. So again, that is right at the level. And there's a couple of votes here for third-party candidates. So I want to get the exact number here, 671. If you give me a second to just get the exact number here, I can tell you the percentage, which I think is important. 61 to 36%. So that is right. She has gotten 61% of the new vote out here. Adam Laxalt's gotten 36%. We have talked about the importance to Masto of maintaining the number that she's been getting. That is right on the number she's been getting. That's right what Democrats were expecting. You see it has now been updated in our system. And so statewide, there it is for the first time now since election night. Catherine Cortez Masto has passed Adam Laxalt, has moved into the lead. It is essentially a 5,000 vote lead, 4,982 votes. That is Catherine Cortez Masto's advantage statewide, 0.5%. She moves into the lead. Again, this is it in terms of mail ballots in Clark County. They said tonight would be the last night. That's the final batch. You got 22,000 plus right there. It has totally changed the leaderboard in this race. Masto ahead by about 5,000 votes. And as I say, what is to come now? And I believe that may be with very limited. There it is. That's the check mark.
Oh, wow.
Catherine Cortez Masto declared by our decision desk the winner of the Nevada Senate race. With Catherine Cortez Masto's victory in the Nevada Senate race, Democrats now have control of the United States Senate ensured. They have their 50 seats, with Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote that guarantees Democratic control of the Senate for the next 2 years. We are getting numbers as we speak from a critical congressional district here. In fact, it has now been called. California's 27th district, L.A. County just released a batch of new votes. The Republican incumbent, Mike Garcia, has defeated his Democratic challenger, Christy Smith. This win for Republicans is the 218th seat. Republicans have now secured a majority in the House of Representatives. The win by Garcia is number 218. They had been sitting on 217 for the last day or so. This is your list of uncalled races. And you can see literally this was just in the last 90 seconds that this all happened.